and welcome to the Superbwoman Sundays at 7. My name is Janet Neal, and I am your host. I'm also the founder and queen bee at the Superbwoman Incorporated. So glad you could join us tonight. We again have another superb woman as my guest. Tonight's guest is Myra Terry, and in a minute you'll see Myra. How we met was Myra used to be the founder and CEO of the Women's Fund of New Jersey, an organization that raised funds to provide services for women and children in the state. That is only a portion of Myra. You'll hear her story about going from being a housewife back in the 60s and feeling the need to do something and being drawn to the women who were at the forefront of the women's liberation movement. And it really sparked something in her. And you'll hear all about her amazing things, going from being the president of the National Organization of Women to working at a state level to be able to provide services for women. And to this day, she is still an ardent women's activist. So I am so thrilled that you have joined us to be able to hear Myra's story, to be able to hear yet another story of a superb woman, a woman who's comfortable in her own skin and is doing amazing things because she has learned to be, because she has connected with who she is, her essence. That is where the power is. I say this all the time. I believe in my bones that women have the power to change this world when we realize it. And so I hope that these videos, and I hope you watch this one and the others that are up on my site, thesuperbwoman.com, and get inspired because you have the power within. Enjoy. So Myra, tell us your story. You were telling me just before we went on the air here that you came of age in a time when Women's Lib was just starting, and here you found yourself, you were a homemaker with 2 children, and then what happened? How did you get to where you are today?
Yeah, it was very complicated because for those who are under 70 or maybe under 65, I'm 71 now. It was, I was a homemaker. I was brought up to be a homemaker and to be married. I was married to a doctor, which was the prize. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden I realized I was incredibly oppressed. And it took the women's movement and especially now to open my eyes and wake me up. Mm. And I was sort of stuck. I was stuck in that time warp. And it was time to get out of it. I wanted to be an activist. I never knew that I could be. I was involved in local organizations, and I immediately became an activist, even in those local organizations, which were really women's organizations. But I always took on the legislative kinds of jobs, or leadership jobs, mm-hmm. not knowing that was going to serve me very well when I got a little farther on. Mm-hmm. No matter where I went, no matter what I did, the issues just bit me. They just said, you gotta eat me. So, I mean, I just did. And I just went from reproductive rights, which was not legal at that point. Abortion was not an option. I knew too many women who had back alley abortions, and that is what we go back to today when we look at all these restrictions that are coming up and say, all right, no matter what you say, no matter how you deal with this, the reality is women are going to be so upset about being pregnant if they don't want to be. They're going to be back alley abortions if you take us back to the Dark Ages. Mm-hmm. So that was my first issue. But it was children's books and battered women. And you have to remember that those and sexual harassment. You have to remember that those issues were not even ones that were taken seriously in the 70s.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. And so I know that in your biography here, you were the first chair, let me get that right, you were the president of the National Organization for Women. So how'd that come about?
That was later in my career. That was in the 90s, and I was doing divorce counseling, and I was an interior designer. But I had been that early in my career, and I was doing both of those things. and now had a series of incredible presidents, and the person who was supposed to be president had a family problem, and they called me and they said, "Would you run?" And I spoke to my husband at the time, and I said, "What do you think?" And he said, "You don't need that." And I called them back, and I said, "Okay, I'll run." He was wonderful with it, but I mean, it was like, oh my God, and then funny. I was out. I worked seven days a week, and it was exciting. If I was asked to do anything on a Saturday or Sunday, which was always, I was out every night. He was great. He was like home eating turkey sandwiches every night or whatever he wanted to eat. He was very independent. It was my second husband, so who I stayed with until he died. I'm a widow, and anyway, it was very exciting time. It was an office in Trenton. There were issues that needed to get taken care of. We were still, even though it was the 90s, we were still hardly any women were in the legislature. The few that were there were totally controlled by their parties. In New Jersey, that still is that way. It's unfortunate, but it is. But less so, because there are more women, and there are people like Loretta Weinberg who are so totally in charge of herself, and the deals that she makes don't hurt women or people of color or any people of who are not capable of earning a living, or any people who have any kind of background that might cause them not to be able to make money, and the world has changed. We are much more understanding and caring about people who are less fortunate.
Excellent. And so that kind of goes along the lines with what you're involved with now, Emerge. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, and the reason I got involved in Emerge is because I've evolved to a place where I realized that what we've just talking about with our legislature and the whole legislative process, and the fact that we only have one woman in our congressional delegation, and that was, for years we had none, zero. There was always a man waiting to take the next important job. So we have Bonnie Watson Coleman, who is an amazing legislator, who is really doing an incredible job in Washington for us. Only one. So when people say, "Oh, you got Bonnie Watson Coleman," or you have somebody like Loretta, it's a small percentage. It is really tiny. So I thought the next step was for us in New Jersey to start to train women, because too many times I had women call me who were running for office, and usually races that they couldn't win, and they'd want my support, both money and help in other ways too, and introducing them to other people. And I had never heard of them. I had never met them until then, and you really don't know what you're doing. But I didn't know who I was supporting, because they were women. But just being a woman doesn't make you pro-woman, or doesn't make you consciousness raised, doesn't make you understand that what's come before and what we fought so hard for, and why being the F word, being a feminist, is so important, and understanding issues. So I realized that it was time to train our own people. So I brought together 6 women from New Jersey who I thought were appropriate to reach out to others. They loved the idea. And it took us a year or two of meeting on a regular basis to decide how we were going to do it. We realized that Emerge America existed, and that we didn't want to recreate the wheel. So we contacted them. I think we were the only state that contacted them. They had this incredible plan to go into whatever states they thought needed it. And so we became an Emerge chapter, and we're Emerge New Jersey. And it works very well for us because there's a curriculum, and we can add our own curriculum or change it. But the wheel. So that has worked really, really well for us. And really what it's about, and when I ask for anybody listening to this or hearing this or seeing this, is that if you're a woman who's really politically motivated, and you think you can't run because it's not your turn, that's what they say, it's not your turn, or just you just think that you might have something and that you would like to do this in the future, it's time to take a look at the Emerge New Jersey, it's emergenewjersey.org website, and look at the application and see what others have said before you. Take a look at the video and just, work around in there and see what's there, because you really can run. And men don't need 9 people telling them that they can run for office. If somebody says you should run for office, oh yeah, I'm qualified, and they're never qualified, and they're never trained, and they're just, their buddies elect them, and their buddies give them money. Well, I have to tell you, we've had 2 classes graduate already, and there's a buddy system of each class. They support each other. They go door to door with each other. They raise money for each other, and when they're down, they're writing emails and they're calling and they're partying together. It is a sisterhood that is extremely powerful.
Wow.
So if you or someone else you know can think about running, and then ultimately what this is going to do is we're going to have a bench of hundreds of women out there of all ages. I mean, and it's any age. There are a lot of young women, I have to say that, which is wonderful because they have a lot of years to be able to run. But there are also women in their 60s. And I have a friend in Maine who's my age, who is going to be entering the legislature this year in Maine. Wow. As an Emerge graduate.
Excellent. Excellent. Yeah. So let me go back here to back in the 60s. Were you how did you come to this being so politically minded? Were you always interested in something like that?
No, I was never really. I knew. No. When I said it bit me before,
right.
I had never even thought about any of the issues. That wasn't my trajectory. It was never even a thought. It was once Now came in and started to do seminars and talk to people and be in the news. All of a sudden, it was like, it's like if you go into a department store and you see that dress and you say, that's for me. And you got to try it on and like, and there's nothing else will do. It just spoke to me. It just spoke to me, and I knew it was right. And I never stopped. I never stopped. People will say to me, you're still doing that? And they'll say, been there, done that. Well, it's never over. Never over. And it's not because, it's because I want to do it. If I didn't want to do it, I would be saying, been there, done that too. But I'm still doing that.
Well, having seen you in action over the years, I can't imagine you not doing it. It just, it's you're in your essence. So yeah. So, and that's a great example of a superb woman. It's knowing what really makes you tick and honoring that and doing it. And the other thing I always talk about is that we can't do this by ourselves. So who is it that's helped you on your path?
Well, when you asked me before about how I started and how I got so involved in this, there are people like Bella Abzug. She was an outspoken woman, like I am. I like to see her as a role model. She was crass and loud, and people really, really, really followed her. She was a tough woman, and she was a great role model. Today we have women who are following more in being more feminine, but are trying to be more feminine. She was just outspoken in a way that spoke to me, and I'm like that too. I call me whatever, but it's being true to myself. I don't give a damn. It's like
absolutely.
When I was younger, I would have had to fit a mold because if you want to be hired or you want to be in the public eye, you sort of have to be more feminine and you can't get angry and you can't cry, and you need to be you need to have your PR in check. But as I get older, I want to say something else about that, and I'm hoping other people can do. I never let a sexist or racist remark go by. I don't, because I'm colluding if I do. And if somebody tells a joke and I know it's going badly, I know it's going to be a sexist or racist joke, I say, I'm hoping you won't finish that joke. And if they finish it, I do not laugh.
Well, it's being true to yourself, so that's excellent.
And it's very difficult to do that because sometimes you're with people that you really don't want to piss off.
Yeah.
But it's difficult. And there are very few situations where I don't do that.
Yeah. So besides Bella, is there anybody else that's helped you on your path?
Yeah, I mean, Gloria Steinem obviously was an amazing role model, and she was never an activist. She's always just an incredible truth teller.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And she was out there as our most beautiful, articulate woman, and she still continues that today. She is that person. So seeing that and seeing her as a role model is another amazing, powerful woman who's now in her 80s. 81. So yeah, and Shirley Chisholm was who ran for president early on, unbought and unbossed. She was she didn't know her place, and that was wonderful. She just said, "I'm running for president," and she did. And I actually see Hillary Clinton as a role model because she never gives up. I always wonder about her because she's approaching my age. You know, she's about 2 years younger than I. And I saw her last week here in New Jersey at a fundraiser. She had come from, it was like 2 days after the Benghazi hearing. She had just done a TV show in New York. She went till 11 o'clock at this fundraiser, and she was going on, and she got in a car and they went off. I don't know where they went off to, but the next day I think she was in New Hampshire. Wow. So when I see older women or women who are above 65 just going day in and day out and being so up on issues and being able to really move on those issues, it shows you that older women can really still do this. Yeah. And one more person, surprisingly enough, Joan Wright. Joan Wright was a New Jersey legislator before the Kane administration. Okay. That's how long ago it was. She's a little older than I am, and she's a Republican. She became the director of the Division on Women, and she is as feminist as I am. And she was always a role model to me. She was as honest and fair, and she, as much as she has an R next to her name, she believes everything that I do. So I think that the party just went off a little bit too far to the right, but that there were lots of good women who were in the Republican Party, and I will always say that, no matter what.
Excellent. So another thing that I talk about when I'm talking about superb women is that superb women seem to have learned about the word should, that it contains guilt, that it doesn't work for them. So what's a should that you have let go in your life or are working on letting go?
Yeah. Well, that goes back to the racist remarks. I mean, I don't let anybody go by with that. Well, obviously I don't color my hair. I did put on a tiny little bit of blush for this because I knew on screen that I really get washed out. But most times I am bare. I go bare. So that's really important to me. And there were the years when I didn't wear a bra. Those are the early years when I didn't need one, and it was part of our movement. Right. And it was free. Let me tell you, it was really, really freeing. I never shaved, which might make some of you think that that's because that's people do today. But I just thought that shaving was something that was like it's natural. So like, why do that? You know, I wanted to look my best, but that was not something that I really felt that I wanted to do. And you pay the price for some of those things. Talking about sexist and racist comments, I remember a legislator put his hand around my back, touched me, and I remember taking his hand off and really being annoyed because they take liberties with you. And those are things like, oh, don't, what went through my mind was, oh, he's only trying to be a nice man. He doesn't know any better. Because he doesn't know any better doesn't mean that you can't tell him that that's not right.
Right. Yeah. Excellent. So what about gratitude? How does that play into your life?
It's a really great question because I don't know that I had a lot of gratitude when I was younger. It didn't even occur to me. Now, because it's such a buzzword, And luckily I've been able to, I do a lot of meditation, and I've been able and my world has changed so much in the last 10 years that I have so much gratitude for what I do have, because I am not in the mainstream anymore. I am busy, and I'm very active in Emerge, and I'm active in Blue Wave and in Montclair, but I'm just not, I'm not totally active every single day of my life. And that feels good, because I'm pretty much retired. But I would say, every time I look out the window right now and I see these beautiful trees, I feel gratitude. The days when things go smoothly, like a day like today, when I went from my weight training to a lunch with my cousin, to working on my computer, to doing some other work, and then speaking to you, I feel gratitude that and I voted, of course. Everybody should vote. Right. And that's another issue that women spent our first wave of feminism. I was part of the second wave. They went to jail. They were force-fed. They were beaten for our right to vote. Right. So I see the right to vote, even when it's not a compelling election, to go and vote for people is really, really important. The people that you choose. And sometimes you have to do a little sleuth work to find out who those people are, especially for me. I don't have kids in school anymore, and it's a very different way when I'm not as active in the community. Yeah.
So let me go a little bit further with that, because you say that you're retired now, and yet the list of things that you're doing doesn't sound like retired to me. So tell me, how are things different for you now?
Well, we travel a lot.
Okay.
I'm going to be gone for the winter. I will fly home for a weekend, for a week, for the opening of the Emerge class, the first class, because I want to meet the class, and I want to welcome them and meet them. I want to greet them, and I want to know them, and I want them to know that I'll be back in April. But if I were the executive director or chair of the board, I wouldn't be running off for 4 months. But that's what I need to do at this point in my life, is to go someplace where it's warm and come home if it's necessary. But so I made that commitment to do that. And I don't take on major roles anymore. I will take on a short stint, like our last fundraiser where we had a gala. I took on some of the planning for the event, only the parts that I felt that I had an incredible experience in and that I could do easily. But I don't bite off more than I could chew anymore. It makes me very nervous. I have a different kind of anxiety now that before I would work through that anxiety no matter what, because I think that part of being comfortable in my own skin is that I'm not that comfortable, but I work through it. It's being able to work through whatever it is and have fear, but work through it anyway. And that's what I know, and I continue to do. But it makes me a little more uncomfortable than it did 10 or 20 years ago when I just barreled through everything.
Well, what you just said is, I've heard as the definition of courage is feeling the fear and doing it anyway. So you're a very courageous woman. And I also think that, being comfortable in your own skin is a lot of self-knowledge. And if you recognize that, this isn't the way you used to do it, is not the way that you want to do it this time, and you honor that is what's important.
Yes. And that's why I'm running away for 4 months, away from the cold.
And I get that.
And that's why I don't make dinner every night anymore. And that's why I don't always contact people that I should contact, like as far as, friends, and that I just take a deep breath and say, I'm going to relax tonight, or I'm going to do less. And before I wanted to do more, and now I want to do less.
Yeah. So how do you choose the things that you want to do? If you're doing less with your time, how there's a lot of things that are possible for you to do? How do you decide what's the right thing for you?
It just comes to me, just like getting involved in the women's movement. It just came to me. It really has to tickle me in a way where I say I have to be involved in this. Okay. Otherwise, it's a burden, and the reason I don't take on the burdens is because it eats at me. I don't really want to do this, and there's anxiety over that. Darn it, I promised to do this, and I really don't want to do it, and I know I have to, and I will, but then I get resentful. So I don't want to be resentful. I don't want the shoulds. Exactly. And there are times when you have to be. There are certain things we must do, but there's less and less that I must do. And I volunteer less for things that I don't want to do.
Excellent. I think that's actually very healthy in the way that you just described that. So is there anything else coming up for you besides what we've already talked about?
No, and my future, what I'm doing now actually just by chance, because it happens often, is that people will call me and say, people I haven't heard from in a while will call me and say, I want to run something by you. So I'm doing a lot of mentoring. That's lovely, just to spend a lunch with someone or and just to help them out. That is a very comfortable place in my life, and that's not a real commitment. That's that's an hour or two of just being with someone and enjoying their company and helping them figure out their next steps. So that's been a wonderful, and that's also part of the Emerge process too, because there are people who will call me after I've mentioned it to them and say, you know what, I'm going to apply to the Emerge program. I went online and I saw the application, and they'll call me and they'll want some advice about that too. So that is, that's a really lovely part of life, to be in a place where women call me for advice and really just want help. It feels great. It feels wonderful.
Excellent. Yeah, that's very nice. And I'm sure you do a marvelous job at that.
Sometimes.
I'm quite sure you do. So tell us again, what is the website for Emerge?
EmergeNewJersey.org.
New Jersey spelled out, New Jersey, or NJ?
I'm sorry, Emerge NJ. You know what? I need to check that.
I think you're probably right about that.
NewJersey.org. Yeah.
So I'll have at the end of this, for those of you who are watching this on YouTube, you'll see a slide at the end that will have the correct website for you.
And it's easy to find on Google.
Okay. Excellent. Well, Myra, I just want to thank you so much for being my guest tonight, and for continuing to be an inspiration not only to myself, but so many other women out there.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And thank you for being an inspiration to me too.
Wow. Thanks a lot. And for those of you out there, thank you for joining us, and join us again next week, where I'll have another superb woman as my guest. And until then, have just a superb week. Take care.